we really do aim to, make it as authentic as it can be. I feel like the audience can always tell if you're not being genuine about it. And I always wanted to be able to express why exactly I like something. So I think the thing that we've been doing more and more is, saying, hey, we like this, but we want to also develop that concept. Why do we like it? Everybody can say, yeah, this is cool.
Right.
Yeah, this is awesome. That's easy. Like anybody can do that, or this sucks, right? We're going to say, oh, this shot is amazing. Why? Get into it a little bit,
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Reactorverse podcast brought to you by Passionfruit. I'm joined today by the dynamic duo of Ari and Denise, also known as the Media Knights. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us.
Of course. It's about time, I'd say, to have you both on. One, because we've definitely gotten some requests over the last year or so here and there from commenters saying they want to see you on here. So I'm happy to have them satisfied.
Awesome.
But also, you just did an interview with our mutual friend Greg Alba on his podcast, Diary of a Real Reject.
Yes.
Where you talked to him about your life and his questions and stuff like that. And so when I saw that, I'd already been planning to have you on for a little while, and I saw that and I was like, okay, it's time to finally get him on here. And it's funny though, when I saw that pop up, I watched the first 5 minutes and I was like, okay, I'll have to save it because I don't want it to influence my experience by trying to interview you as well. So I'll luckily be able to go back and finally finish that once we're done here.
Oh, awesome. Hope you enjoy it.
Yeah. But yeah, like I said, it's been great to, just like follow your journey so far. It's only been a few short years for you with the channel, but you've really sort of cemented yourself in the space with like a really healthy audience and like just like, rotation of work that you put out. It's really been impressive. So I wanted to sort of go over that whole journey with you. As we always do, we start at the very, very beginning of everything, which is just between the two of you. How did you two meet?
Oh. So we met in theater school, actually, in New York. Oh, really? So yeah.
Wow.
Basically, I went in there because I've always loved storytelling. And the storytelling that I always consumed was, through comic books and reading some of the novels that I enjoyed. I was like, oh, wow, it'd be cool to kind of learn a little bit, about writing. And I figured if I wanted to write, I would want to do like stuff like scripts, hopefully one day. And kind of it all became kind of a snowball effect. And then I went from going there to study that into falling in love with, the backstage of it all and falling in love with the camera, falling in love with photography, and then through there into filmmaking finally. So it was kind of like a whole evolution thing. But yeah, and she was there for her other passions, her other love, which I'm sure she will explain in a second. And I got to meet her there, and that was it. It was amazing.
Yeah, like it was the same for me. Like I had wanted to get into acting and filmmaking for a very long time, and I had, just like like one of those kid theater stars, I guess. Like I did some theater work when I was younger, and I just remember loving it so much and kind of wanting to get back into it. But again, like it's acting, right? It's one of those things where it's like, what are the odds that you're gonna make it, right? Because maybe it's not in Hollywood, but at least you want to be able to support yourself and, not starve. That would be great.
Yeah, exactly. Just work.
Yeah. So essentially, like at that school, we got to train in multiple different aspects when it comes to performing arts in general, like singing and dancing and acting for the screen and whatnot. And so like we just ended up meeting there. And it was such an amazing experience because first of all, I got to read, and study a lot more plays and actually got to learn how to study screenplays or just regular plays and, understanding character and building character and all the other work that kind of goes into it. And then eventually just kind of evolved into like more of a passion into filmmaking. Like exactly like you just get bit by the bug, right? Because there are so many people around you that are just as creative and also like just as passionate as you are. And, we were lucky to have a lot of people around us who were hungry, to try different things. And then I ended up like just randomly deciding that I was like, you know what, I'm gonna make my very own short film with like zero budget whatsoever. And like once I was doing that, and because I wrote the script, I remember I had a little keyboard. I even did the score for that score, if you can even call it that. Well, we'll just call it that. We'll just be generous. But
Right.
I just remember like there was so much involved in there. I had to wear multiple hats. I ended up directing that and having to direct myself because I was acting in it too. And it was like such an insane experience. But like after that, I was like, yeah, this is it. Like filmmaking,
Yeah.
like that's where
Yeah.
it's at for me, for sure.
You get the creative juices flowing, with peers, and that's the beauty of it, being in that environment, is be able to have that synergy with everyone else, sort of feeding it into you, giving
Absolutely.
it back, and so on. And it was theater, like in movies and just storytelling, sort of the thing that you two bonded over
Yeah.
at first.
Yeah. It was actually, it was, the scripts that we were getting at the time that we got to read and kind of, get ready for and practice. And, we would perform these auditions in school,
Right.
just so that the teachers would see what levels we were at. And, through that and kind of like deciding, just having these conversations of why characters would do certain things and the character beats and their arcs and stuff, and that like the whole storytelling aspect is really what made us bond, and then when we were talking about mediums, I feel like filmmaking was definitely like the thing that pulled us the most in that direction. We're like, I think based on everything we love, where we also like music quite a bit, and the storytelling aspect and the visual aspect, because before I even got into that school, I was very much into photography as well. I very much like, certain kinds of like urban photography, street photography, architecture, all that stuff. So I figured like all of those passions were always colliding towards filmmaking. I was like, that makes sense. And then once we met, we started talking about that. And that's definitely like the one of the pillars of our relationship is definitely talking about movies.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And because it's interesting, jumping ahead a little bit with the channel, a lot of, the novelty of a reaction channel is like being able to watch, movies for the first time. And so many people we've seen come into the space are people who are usually, really fresh to that. They either didn't have, cinemaphile backgrounds growing up. And so this is like their sort of first, foray into that. But for you, that sort of like, influences a lot of how you approach it, which I really find interesting when people are able to have that insight into like the filmmaking experience and like how they structure their commentary through it. So what were your sort of individual backgrounds with movies, I guess, growing up in terms of just like your exposure to it and your value of it?
So like I mentioned, growing up, I was very much into comic books, and my view of movies, like I watched movies, I was just not well versed in them, I would say, right? So growing up, obviously I would watch the things that any kid would watch. So I was watching the comic book films of the year, that were coming out. I was watching the Spider-Mans, the Batmans. I was watching all of that stuff. And then, once I started growing a little bit and maturing, I started really becoming more interested in films. But again, I was very much in that niche that was like highly produced, a lot of visual effects, and that was like my jam. I didn't really care about the substance of the script. I wanted the cool visuals because in my head, I was always very much of a techie, I would say. I very much enjoy seeing the technological advancements and how that can be displayed with films. And it's a cool time, even if a movie's just kind of entertaining, even if it's not like the most amazing script, you still have a great time. You're still entertained. So that was like my experience. And then little by little, because I wanted to make sure that these scripts that I want to, one day be able to finish and hopefully, becomes a solid product, I wanted to make sure that I would do my research. And it just didn't feel right to feel like I was doing something to the best of my ability, not having the background of films in and of itself. I'm like, how would I know that I'm writing something good if I don't know movies to begin with, right? I know how they're done. I know the process of cooking. I just don't know how to cook, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? That's how it felt.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. And this was like 2019, 2020, I would say. We just had we graduated school around what, 2019, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. 2018,
okay.
2019.
So right after that, I was like, okay, I'm gonna start watching movies that are a little bit older, because I don't know why, as growing up in my mind, it was like, well, if it has a 1990 something on it, and before that, it's probably not going to look that great. And that was like my mindset, which is terrible. I know. And so I started making it like a point to watch films that were out of my comfort zone per se, just to see if I would enjoy them, just to see if it was a choice that I made, a conscious decision. If I ever watched one and I was like, oh, it's boring me, or why, like what was the reason for me not watching those movies, right? So I started watching a few movies here and there that I actually highly enjoyed and were like 90s and 80s films. I can't really remember off the top of my head which ones they were, but I remember one that it's a pretty big one, and we commented this in the podcast with Greg. That she was like, what, you haven't, she was like any other YouTube commenter out there for the reaction channel. She was like, wait, you haven't seen this? What do you mean? What? I was like, listen, I know. It's a huge movie. We're talking about The Matrix, by the way.
Yes.
Huge film. I had not seen it yet. And, you know, we were like hanging out at that point, and, you know, she decided to show it to me, and I absolutely loved it. I was mind blown by it. Loved the script. The visuals obviously were amazing. They still are, you know, even after all these years, it still looks super stylized and it still looks great. And from that point on, we were always talking about sharing our, you know, our voice, having an opinion and kind of talking. We wanted to connect to an audience that related to how we felt about movies, that saw them as a bit more than just entertainment, that actually appreciated how they're made, the intricacies, how easy it is to mess them up, and how hard it is to make a great one, right? I think a lot of people don't know that. And right after we recorded, not recorded, right after we watched the movie, we looked at each other, and I had such a profound experience with that. And I think we jokingly said, like, wow, it would have been great to record that just so you could have it, right? Like the first time you saw The Matrix, like that would have been amazing. And that kind of like, you know, that ignited something. I was like, ooh, wait, like what if we could? So the channel is actually serving a multi-purposes. Not only is it serving the goal that we wanted of, you know, reaching that community and getting that conversation started about what films mean to us, and you know, getting to watch people's favorite movies all the time and talking about why they're so special to them, and us figuring that out and exploring that. But we also get to kind of, you know, do a journal entry and look back at these movies and see, oh, I remember this movie. I remember we loved it, but why? And in our discussions, we tend to go over why we love this movie. And that kind of creates these points for us to write down and understand why a movie works so well. And that's kind of been such a great tool for me to use now, to go through all these movies and be like, okay, why does this film work so well? If it's from a script perspective or a character arc perspective, or the themes, how do they go about it?
Right.
And it's been a great compass in a way for me to kind of, well, for both of us to kind of have a better direction in terms of our writing as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's because, you know, it's a sort of cyclical, you know, nature of that. You know, the more that you give into it, you're trying to explore the space, explore films, and then in the process you're learning more about it, and that just like it's an exponential growth of like how you engage with the material. Like I was the same way growing up. I didn't have like sort of like a huge depth of understanding in film growing up. I liked a lot of, like you said, like the sort of like mainstream produced stuff. And then once I got a little older, went to film school, that's when you start sort of picking away at it, and you start asking yourself again, why, how does this work? But you start putting away the biases for the sake of, like, you know, trying to understand where the evolution came from. And like you mentioned the channel and getting started with that. Were you familiar with the space prior to that, the reaction space?
Well, yes, a little bit, not to the extent obviously that we are now, but because I wanted to see, like, you know, you get that moment and then it's like, okay, I'm sure somebody has done it already, right? So let me look it up. Let me see what that looks like. And we actually ended up finding, it was around the time that Spider-Man No Way Home was going to come out. And at the time, we were both actually serving, you know, we're in New York, we're servers, it's cold, it gets dark really early, and we were in a tough spot. You know, it was right, I think the whole pandemic situation had happened. It was starting to get better, but the restaurants were still empty. So we were struggling, to say the least, and we kind of also needed a space to, you know, just relax a little bit and decompress. And we would put on YouTube like everybody does. You know, you put on YouTube and you just try to think about something else, right? And one of these videos, because I had been researching the space, was the Real Rejects were reacting to Spider-Man No Way Home, you know? And I was like, oh yeah, let's check this out. We saw their video. We thought it was awesome. And then, you know, every day or like anytime we would come back from work and we wanted to watch something that would lift our mood up, we'd be like, oh, it's a trailer reaction. Let's check it out. Let's check out the trailer, you know? And that's kind of how we got in touch. And it really did help. It lifted our moods up and, you know, it got us talking about movies once again. So that kind of, it fed off of it, you know, of itself, like the wanting to do something else and also feeling that we wanted to do something similar. We wanted to be able to communicate this with an audience and just have fun and watch movies.
Yeah.
It all kind of fed into it. So
yeah, very much in the cyclical nature that you mentioned, right? It's like the more we got to consume, you know, in that sense, the more we wanted to also have that output, right? It's eventually like we were talking about these movies so much amongst ourselves, and eventually was like, you know, it would be really cool to also kind of open up that conversation, right? And have other people's opinions also flood in, right? And kind of really dissect certain aspects of a film or whatever. And that's what's happening a lot in our comment section. And like, that's one of the most fun parts about it, where, you know, there, even if it's, for example, like a movie that I have like seen before and I'm showing it to him, right? And then, or if it's a movie that we've watched for the first time, there are so many comments where they point out things that we both miss, where it's like, oh my God, or it's like theories or certain analyses that didn't even cross my mind, that I hadn't even thought of in that way. And it's such a great way to kind of broaden your horizons, as cheesy as that may sound. It's genuinely so much fun and educational, because you also get to explore how different people view things in different ways, and how that's so valuable when it comes to any type of media in general. So like just getting to do that, it was so much fun, man. It's been so much fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's definitely one of I think the biggest values of the reaction format is that from an audience standpoint, you're seeing people for the first time and just like living that experience through them and just how they start to digest material. And then likewise, when you're doing this and you have, you know, like a flood of, you know, several hundred comments coming in about what you just watched, it opens your, you know, your perspective about like how people also digested it. And like it's not just your own isolated experience. You get to sort of like learn from, okay, this person obviously loves this film and they've done a lot of research on it, so their insight is pretty valuable of like what they're sort of giving us, and you know, trying to help us like understand it. And then when you were, you know, getting started, were there any sort of significant learning curves in terms of just like, you know, the technical aspect of like recording and editing, but also just the presentational aspect of like, you know, just getting comfortable on camera and stuff?
Yeah, I think when it comes to the technical one, I think you're gonna have to take that.
Yeah,
there was definitely learning curve.
So like the basic editing stuff, that was fine to figure that out, like, you know, cuts and all that was pretty simple. But I remember at the time we had a camera and we were trying to figure out like the right angle for the space that we had. And it was horrible. It was really bad. We barely had space to place the camera anywhere. And it just did not look good. Like it really didn't. I tried my best and I just couldn't make it look the way I wanted to. And, you know, eventually I figured out why. And it's funny because we still use the same camera. But if you look at those first videos, it looks like we bought like a brand new $4,000 lens or something. But it's exactly the same setup with some settings that were tweaked that I didn't realize were really hindering the performance of how, you know, the aesthetic of it all. And of course, lighting is so important.
Yes.
So I feel like, you know, figuring all those things out and what elements are the most important was very much necessary. And I guess having to deal with audio in a more professional environment was also a big one. Like at first we had just one microphone. We were both sharing the same microphone and it sounded horrible. You know, it sounded really bad. It's like
just get the
gain
echo
all the way up and you could hear like our AC and it was just really bad. So I guess learning all these things, and because we also appreciated that in media, both in content on YouTube specifically, when it's like an individual who's actually put in the effort to make their content, you know, be at the best of what they can deliver, right? When it comes to the visuals, to the audio and all that, we appreciate that. So we started looking at our own channel in a very critical way as well, which is, you know, it's not always about that, right? You don't need the most expensive gear to make great content. It's not about that, but you do want to make sure that you have the best tools you can get that will make your life easier when it comes to producing content. So, you know, figuring all of that out and figuring how to use like an interface and microphones and all that. We kind of already knew because we had to deal with some boom mics in school, but having to really, really use them to get the, to get your own product at that level was definitely a task.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then, the presentational aspect of just like, getting comfortable and being able to articulate yourself on camera, I know is its own sort of, hill to climb at first. Was that something you guys, found pretty easy because of your theater background, or was it something you had to adjust because of the specific format of this, this setting?
You know what's interesting about that is I feel like acting on stage or acting in front of a camera in a way is easier because you're playing a character. Actually being yourself in front of the camera, because it's such an interesting phenomenon that, as soon as a camera appears in a crowd, if you pay attention, you'll notice that people immediately change how they behave, right? They're definitely not who they were 5 seconds ago before they saw that camera. It's like your posture, you're suddenly very aware of yourself, whether it's your physicality or your voice or whatever else it may be that you tend to nitpick about yourself. So being yourself and still like finding a way to be entertaining, that was a tough ride for me, for sure. Yeah. I feel like, again, like with anything else, practice does make perfect. I feel so much more comfortable now. Like, every once in a while, like if I have to edit something of ours or, when we're reviewing something, I feel a lot more comfortable now watching us and seeing how we interact with each other, with the material, with the content. It's a lot more us now. I feel like, not that we weren't us before. It was just like, it was very tough to, really loosen the screws a little bit, and not to be so, you get tense and you get, or like, I'm going to speak for myself. Like, I don't know if that was your experience, but like I would get nervous as soon as, we hit record. I'm like, oh my God. And like, you would just mind everything. And now it's a little bit more second nature, I guess. But, like there is definitely some assistance from, a theater background, especially, when it comes to, like maybe like projecting your voice or, trying to articulate certain things. And again, like in the middle of a reaction, it does come in handy when there's a certain thing that we catch or a theme that we catch and we get to just say it right there in the moment. So it all does kind of come together hand in hand, but like being comfortable in front of the camera was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. I'll be very honest with you.
Yeah. Cause that's something I noticed about your sort of your dynamic is you both have a very sort of like, sharp commentary. Like I think it's very deliberate, but it's very natural.
Thank you.
It kind of reminds me of how Greg describes it, is you're able to sort of unzip yourself and just, let those thoughts come out of you in a sort of way that is somewhat unnatural because like you maybe might not do that. You just in a solo setting or off camera,
right.
Sort of articulate that because of the presentational aspect of it. And just, over the years, has that gotten easier to develop? Just, in terms of like, being able to like think of those things on the fly and find the flow and the pacing, with the movie and stuff like that.
It's been it's definitely easier than in the beginning. I think the challenge is, when you're watching as many movies, and like, this is something that we always talk about, whenever we're not recording and we're talking about the channel, is that we really do aim to, make it as authentic as it can be. I know it might sound a little cliche, but you can really get stuck in the routine of, oh, this is easy now, so let me just sit down and say whatever. And that's like my worst nightmare. I don't want to just have my 15 to 20 lines that I know I'm going to say whenever, and kind of have them as placeholder. Because, I feel like the audience can always tell if you're not being genuine about it. And I always wanted to be able to express why exactly I like something. So I think the thing that we've been doing more and more is saying, hey, we like this, but we want to also develop that concept. Why do we like it? I feel like once you start adding a reason behind it, it's not, everybody can say, yeah, this is cool. This is awesome. That's easy. Like anybody can do that or this sucks. Right. But adding that commentary or that extra sentence, even because as you know, with the reaction, it moves at the speed of light. So there's only so much you can say, but you can be like, hey, that's cool because this, right? And add your actual own commentary to that comment. And that's something that we've been really striving for. Sometimes it's easier with depending on the movie, depending on the
Right.
pacing of the film. You know, animated movies are terrible for that because they move at the speed of light.
Yeah,
So there's only
especially
so
the first
much.
20 minutes. It's
Yeah.
a nightmare
You
to
can't-
even get one sentence in.
Yeah, you can't really
Yeah.
do much, you know. So you know, it depends. We love having films that have that time to breathe, so we can actually like process the information and give the audience a rich commentary. But that's definitely a development I've seen on our part, where, you know, before we used to be more superficial, and then we would get into it maybe in the discussion a little bit
Right.
more. But now
Mhm.
we're able to be more efficient, I would say, about what we're saying. If we're going to say, oh, this shot is amazing, why? Get into
Right.
it a little bit,
Yeah.
you know? And then you can go into the emotion that something can convey depending on the shot. We've had a lot of fun with comments like those, you know, depending on the film. It's like, oh, this is a lower angle shot. It's conveying power, right? And you
Right.
definitely feel like
Yeah.
a bit oppressed when this character is on screen. And having these kind of commentaries make for a really fun dynamic, and having that in mind, you know, making our commentary, you know, upgrading it a little bit and making it a little bit richer has definitely been something that we are continuing to strive for, you know. So yeah, it's gotten easier on one end, but on the other, we are not, you know, not that we're not where we want to be. I think we are, but it's a constant challenge to always be able to deliver that kind of, you know, communication with your own audience.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. It's challenging yourself to keep growing. It's like that, you know, that thing when you're in. One thing I remember from my days doing martial arts a long time ago is,
Cool.
you know,
Nice.
when you're punching, every consecutive punch needs to be harder if you want to keep up the same level of energy that you're putting out. So it's like, you know, the same thing for, I think, art and creativity is like it can get stale if you sort of lose that momentum
Yeah.
of like why you did it and like how you're doing it. You got to keep developing your sort of style and like, you know, edge around it.
Mhm.
I think it's very true for you know, commentary, is that you want to be able to grow and articulate your sort of responses really quickly. In that sense, it becomes a really good training exercise because you're also like, you know, challenging yourself to understand these things a little bit more quickly and then also decompress with it, you know, after the fact with the review at the end.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's very smart. And then developing that sort of style for both of you and like just the channel itself. I wanted to ask, how did you decide on the name Media Nights? Were there any, you know, you know, secondary options you had on the list, you know, before you settled on that?
There was a
Yeah.
primary option, and it was not the Media Nights.
It was not the Media Nights. Media Nights was the second option, actually.
Yeah. So we had spoken about it, and the channel had, you know, I was like on the create your channel page, and we were talking about it, you know, joking
Aw.
around. And the title was going to be, it was still Nights,
Yeah.
but it was going to be the movie Nights, as,
Mhm.
you know, as a kind of, you know, a double meaning stupid thing where it's like, oh, the movie Nights as a night, day and night,
Yeah.
Right.
or Nights as, you know, what our name is, right?
Yeah.
And it was, I think it was taken or
was
something. I could not
taken,
use it. I was
wherever
like, oh,
that was.
you got to be kidding me. But then, you know, we were talking, I was a little bit bummed about that, but then we were talking and it's like, okay, if we're going to do this, are we going to stick to movies, or what else are we going to do? Which is funny because if you look at our channel now, we definitely did just stick to movies. But, you know, there's a lot of, again, we'll get into, I'm sure we'll get into that, but like, you know, the whole copyright situation definitely limits how much you could do. But when it comes to media, you know, like movie score and soundtrack is also something we would absolutely love to talk about, right?
Right.
It has a lot of emotion and whatnot. So we didn't want to just call it movie anything. We wanted to be able to share commentary on some of the video games we play that have
Right.
really rich story. And again, it goes back to that initial comment I made, which is storytelling is our real passion. So anything that has a really compelling story, whether it's a really good video game or a great music video or a great score, because even I feel like there's story even with music, right? That has
Oh,
a
yeah.
beginning, a middle, and end, and you can kind of decipher what it makes you feel, right? It's a bit more abstract, but you can definitely figure out those beats. So we landed on, you know what, why don't we just call it media? You know, like media is such a big part of it, encompasses everything we do love in this space. And that was it, man. I put in media, I went through and I was like, all right, sounds great.
Guess
And
that's
then
it.
now when we look back at it, it's like, how could it not be option one? It's insane. It should have always been Media Nights.
Because like
Yeah.
when we said it out loud a few times, it was like, actually, it sounds pretty good, right?
Right.
It sounds pretty good. And now it's like, I can't think of anything else other than this. You know, it feels like home now.
Right.
Yeah. It sets in once you get comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The same thing when I developed the name sort of named Nerd Chronic. It was for a podcast I was doing it with some friends, and it was just like the name that we were tossing around back and forth with like other things. But this was the one where all the domains were open
Oh, cool.
for the tags and everything. So we're like, we'll just go with this one then. So this is the one that we'll still stick with.
Awesome. Yeah, that's how it works out.
And you started, like you said, sort of coming out of the height of the pandemic in 2022. Things were starting to sort of return back to normal from where it was over the last couple of years. And it's the whole process. I've talked to lots of people in the space have come in because of a similar response that you had, which is that you're trying to just like sort of have some sort of outlet from work and like life and just how crazy the world was at that time. And as things were sort of returning, your channel was starting to thrive. I guess what was that first year like? Just start balancing the world going back to normal and also just trying to build this at the same time and just just getting your lives back online with that.
It was extremely difficult
Yeah,
at first.
it was a journey. I'm gonna tell you that.
Yeah, because like I mentioned, we were both serving in New York, which is high demand, and it can get very, very crowded. And once the pandemic started to die down, people started to come back in, right? And we would find ourselves working, 5 days a week, whatever, 10, 12 hours a day on our feet, and then do what we had to do, right, to make our money, and then come back home and be like, let's put a little bit of work into the channel, regardless of how we feel right now. I'm telling you, we're like devastated. Our feet are sore.
Yeah.
Maybe we had like a bunch of like super rude customers. Sometimes not. It wasn't always horrible, but those days that it requires a little bit extra from your part to really, do the thing. And the beginning was very much that. It was handling essentially 2 jobs at the same time that required for you to be there full time. Like, I don't think a lot of people that are not doing this understand how much of a full time thing YouTube is. Like, it really requires a lot.
Yeah.
And that's what we started learning fairly soon. And we were like, okay, eventually we're going to have to make a choice. But in order for us to have that luxury, we got to kind of make it grow a little bit more, and we have to put in the work. So as tired as we were, it kind of motivated us to be like, it doesn't matter. We got to do this because we don't want to do this thing anymore that we've been doing. And we want to do something that's actually going to help us grow and learn. Right. And we put in that extra hour to 2 hours a day whenever we came back from work. And that's kind of how it was in the beginning.
Yeah, it was definitely a journey, man, especially because, we were also both, I think, gaining a lot of extra skills, which, in the beginning, when you're just learning something, you're not necessarily that good at it, right? And it's practice. And I still remember like him teaching me how to edit, making the cuts and all of that stuff. And I remember the stress of, seeing this massive project, on your timeline and thinking to yourself, like, I know I just watched this, for example, this episode, but I have no idea what to keep. Like, what do I keep? What do I cut? What is okay to cut? And on top of that, because we were also thinking in terms of entertainment value for the viewers, right? And we want to cram in as much as we can, but it's also, you have the copyright gods, that can be very wrathful sometimes, and they really mess with you sometimes. And like that was a journey all on its own, just figuring out how to, take something that's like 2.5 hours long and like squish it into like an hour or an hour and a half or however long it is. And I remember even like when I was like serving or when I was bartending, just like that was just in the back of my head where I was like, oh, when I get home, how are we going to do that? Or like, should I have kept this clip instead? Like it just kind of stays with you. And it's been a heck of a journey. I'm not going to lie, especially like you said, sometimes like, anything customer service facing can be very emotionally draining sometimes. Sometimes it's great because you have a lot of people or you have fun coworkers or whatnot, but there are certain days where it really does take a toll on you. And then you have to sit down, turn the lights on, put the camera on and be like, hey guys, what's up? How are you today? And the thing is, like, it was just that reminder for both of us that this was like a path to the ultimate goal for us, right? This is the main job. Like, there's the job that, pays the bills, but this is it. This is the gig that, it's a plant. It needs to be watered and nurtured and taken care of. And so just finding that balance, it was tough, but eventually we did manage.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's absolutely, how we would describe, the sort of like specifically the reaction landscape and just like maintaining a channel in general. It's very much like a garden. You have to maintain it constantly. You can't just make it and then just like it's there now to
Right.
work with. You have to constantly keep it up. And yeah, developing the style for yourself, for editing and copyright issues. It's a balance, a tricky balance. Finding the sweet spot between your sort of specific presence on camera mixed with the movie, and everyone's style is different.
Yeah.
And just trying to understand like how do we sort of complement ourselves while again like maintaining the entertainment value of the film itself. And you started with Prey was the first movie that you did on the channel, I believe, in 2022.
Wow.
And that was
That was a while
when
ago.
yeah, and that was when it went directly to Hulu. In the sort of the height of the streaming wars after the pandemic, when movies were coming straight to the home video instead of theaters and such.
Yeah.
And was that a specific choice to start with that one because of the home release? Was it like, were you waiting to strike while the iron's hot, or was it just like, hey, this new movie's coming out, let's just try this because it's just what people are gonna be talking about it?
I can actually give you some behind the scenes information that I don't think anybody else knows. So you're going to get this special bit.
Exclusive,
It was not our first one, but in fact, I don't think our first ones don't exist. And I hate to throw shade, but I'll tell you why. We're doing, because like I told you, like I was talking about before, we were doing the basically the shifts and then come back home, and we were extremely tired. So we were like, you know what, let's start with a show, because that's like an hour of high energy. It won't require that much. And this was like in August, mid-August.
Yeah.
Right. And I was like, oh my God, this show is going to come out on Netflix. It looks really cool. Let's give it a shot. It might be a banger. And we get to share something with the people and kind of, dip our toes a little bit and see what it's like. Anyway, we started watching the show. The show, by the way, is Resident Evil.
The
Netflix's.
Right.
And by the third episode, right, because I had played the games. By the third episode, I looked at her and I was like, I can't do this. I was like, I cannot
can't
do
do this
this.
anymore.
And it's funny because I really do believe it's the only time it's happened to me ever since that. It only happened that time. It's never happened to me again, where I cannot finish something because I felt like, because, the thing is, I don't want to just put out content there to shit on something. I want to be able to articulate why, like I mentioned, why I don't like it.
Yeah.
But this was like, for me, it was such a personal gut punch, because it was like, I was a fan of the games, man. And you guys completely just did not adapt any of it. You just took the IP, and I was like so confused as to what exactly they were doing. And it was such a unique thing. I guess if I were to watch it now, I'd maybe appreciate an element or two. But by the third episode, I looked around, I'm like, I'm running out of nice things to say about this. Like, I really don't have anything nice to say. Therefore, I don't think I want to say anything. And we ended up scrapping it. I was like, you know what? I'm going to finish the show on my own, and just, I hated it. So
Yes.
I was in the right early on. But right after that one, we heard about this movie coming out, and it was going to be Prey. And it was going to be, available for streaming. And so everybody was going to get to kind of see it at the same time. And I thought that was a great opportunity to kind of jump in, not just, because of the fact that it's on streaming, but also because I knew that Prey was based on Predator. And we also knew that the journey was always to kind of revisit, that kind of space of like special effects that I always loved as a kid. But through the perspective now of checking the movies that I never watched because I thought they would be too old to look cool, right? So I thought that Prey was like the perfect jumping on point, because you get to watch Prey. I made, I did a little bit of research without spoiling myself, and I knew that I did not need to watch any of the previous ones to really grasp what the film was about. Yeah. So I was like, okay, yeah, that's cool. We could watch Prey, and then if I really dig it, we can like watch the originals and share that with the channel. And that's exactly what we did.
Yeah.
And it was a perfect jumping on point, because like I said, we watched the newest film, and because it's like a prequel, it doesn't really affect how anything else happens within the universe. It doesn't really spoil anything. So we got to watch Predator, knowing now what this creature thing is, and getting like that first initial impact of like, holy shit, this is why people love this movie. This is so cool.
Yeah.
And like we started to fall in love with that. Like we started to feel, it's weird feeling nostalgia for a time you weren't really around for, but you kind of feel that magic, And I feel like a lot of people that love these movies, whether they, they had the opportunity to watch them with their family members or not, but they still carry that love for these films that are a little bit older because of that specific way of doing films back in the day. And that's something that we started to pick up on like during the first year. Like, yeah, this has like every decade really did have its own flavor.
Yeah.
And, we were so glad that Prey gave us that bridge to connect to, previous films. So in a way, yes, it was chosen because of it, but it wasn't our first one, unfortunately. We had prototypes that just did not make the cut.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's honestly in hindsight probably a really good call.
Yeah, because, trust me, it wasn't good.
But because you have the right to sort of be a little picky at first because it's going to be your first presentation of how you represent yourself for the channel, and you don't want to open it up with sort of like this like really negative experience.
Exactly.
I think that would like really taint sort of like the future of what the channel could be from your own investment of it.
Right.
And yeah, and it's funny because I tell people this all the time is like you said, on one hand, a TV show seems like a smaller investment of time because it's a shorter runtime of things to do, but in the long run, it's actually a more of a time sink because you are then committing to the subsequent episodes and how long that season is. Whereas with a movie, it's a complete experience. Once you're done with that, it's like it's encapsulated as a whole for you to sort of like digest and put out. So yeah, it's a funny catch-22 of like having to decide, between those two things.
We learned it the hard way. I can tell you that much. Come the third episode, I was like, oh god, yeah, this is not gonna work.
Yeah, it happens, and it really sucks, especially when it's like a big show and it's like they just didn't hit it, this time. It can happen.
No, not quite with that one.
But Prey, from what I could look at, after the fact, it seemed to really, really pop off. It seemed to like really hit for you guys right away. And I think that sort of helped, jumpstart the channel for you with that first reaction going out. And I've, talked to other people in the space as well who had, really big early pops, and like that can be scary because it can be sort of like, like a jolt of like, okay, we have this sort of, captive audience. How do we capitalize on this? How do we keep this up? What do we got to do to sort of keep up, this sort of lucky, break that we have? Do you recall at first, what was like getting that influx of, views and commenters and just deciding, how to move forward after that?
Yeah, we had a couple of moments actually where, if we would post something, we would get some comments and, we would work on responding to them together. But there were a few things like, for example, like with Prey or the House of the Dragons show, the first season when that dropped. And I still remember when it posted, the comments started coming in. And anytime we would refresh, there would just be more and more and more and more. And we were like, and that was the like one of those experiences where we're like, okay, what do we do?
Yeah.
And so it was like, okay, you start from the top, I'm gonna start from the bottom and just work my way up, and then we'll meet in the middle. And it was just like teamwork, trying to respond to everybody and all of those things. And like that was at first like very overwhelming because it was for me, it was very unexpected. I did not expect it to bring the numbers that it did for our channel at the time. And that hasn't changed. As soon as something goes live, we're still there, responding to the comments and, starting from the bottom and starting from the top and meeting somewhere in the middle. But like, cause you never know like what is going to do well. And then all of a sudden you see those comments coming in and it is a lot. And the thing is like, we have so many wonderful people commenting and so many thoughtful comments too. Like you want to give everyone as much attention as you can. Right?
Yeah.
Like you don't want to just be like, oh yeah, thanks, or just heart. Like, not that there's anything wrong with that, but like that's just kind of how we prefer to do it. Just a bit more of a personal touch in that situation. And like we always said that we were gonna try to keep that up for as long as we can keep it up. And but yeah, like that was interesting. I still remember just being so shocked, like every time, like just refreshing, like more comments coming in. It was like, oh God, okay. Pandora's box, but no, we'll be fine. We got this.
It's it can be like a shock to the system of just trying to engage with it, because early on you want to have that engagement with people, you want to respond to comments and stuff like that. It's just the healthy etiquette of, you know, building a channel. And then the question becomes like, just how do we run this? And like you said, you then moved into House of the Dragon. You had some more movies coming out. Did you have any sort of specific strategy of like what kind of movies you wanted to start with once you started getting more into those reactions at first?
The real strategy was, I don't want to sound too redundant, but it was always to, okay, what do we feel like? Because what we feel like will most likely also show itself in the reaction.
Right.
So at the time, you know, we watched The Predators, and those were, well, we watched the first one, we watched the second one way later on, but we started watching a couple of shows that we wanted to watch, or like House of the Dragon and Last of Us and whatnot, and a couple of movies that, again, were still in my comfort zone, but from a different decade. So what would like an Avengers like film look in the 80s, right? So I was like,
Right.
okay, well, let's look at, we got to make it to T2, right? But I haven't seen Terminator. So how do we get there? So okay, let's watch Terminator. Ended up loving Terminator.
Yes.
My mind is still blown by how much they were able to achieve at the time.
Right.
And then going into T2 and having that, oh my God, blockbuster, you know, experience 30, 40 years later or more than that, you know, and it's surreal, you know, and that kind of, it filled me with joy watching the movies that, you know, I always heard people talk about,
Right.
and so with so much love, but I was never part of that conversation. So in a way, I always kind of felt left out. And whenever it was like, oh, this is my decade, this is the films that I know now, you know, I can kind of jump in. So I kind of wanted to catch up in a way. And after that, it became more about expanding. So it's like, okay, once we started getting comfortable with, you know, yes, cool, these movies work for us and we like doing them and we know how to talk about them and we can convey why we like them in a very clear way. Let's start watching movies that are actually like going to become a challenge for us, something outside of our comfort zone, sometimes, you know, something that we don't really watch that often, you know, be it animation, being comedies, for example.
Right.
Yeah, and then we just started kind of seeing what films, obviously you want to look at the ones that are popular that you have not seen, right? That's kind of like a good place to start. But we also, the other big half of it is, do we feel like watching this, right? Or because we don't want it to feel like work where we're forcing ourselves to watch something just because we have a lot of comments saying, hey, watch this.
Right.
If we might feel like it's just not our cup of tea. But
Yeah.
we've been, I have to say, that's never been the case, thankfully, on the channel where we get a recommendation and we're like, we don't like it, or we feel like, you know, because you can't judge. That's something that we learned too with this space, is that that kind of went away within the first few months, where you can't make an assessment or have that preconceived notion and going into something saying, oh, I'm not gonna like it. You have to
Right.
actually give it a shot. And then a lot of times we've been extremely surprised by something that we thought it was gonna be like
Yeah.
a cool time, and then it ended up being like, holy shit, this is amazing. Like, I want to watch this, you know, at least once every 2 months. This is really cool.
Yeah.
So,
like RoboCop was that
I
experience
was just
for
thinking
me.
about RoboCop. Yeah, that was the exact film I had in my head. RoboCop was amazing. Like, we watched that film and it had everything we loved from a film that you can take with you. You know,
Yeah.
it's a fun experience. It's gory, which really surprised the heck out of me. I was like, whoa, I did not expect this to be that graphic. It had the social commentary that it had, and I think that was the very first Paul Verhoeven film we watched
Yes,
on the
it
channel.
was.
And after that, we've been extremely excited to cover in every one of his movies, and every single one of his movies have become like a gem here in the
Yeah.
channel. Like, it's something that we both just are able to connect to. One of our favorite directors, I would say.
Yeah, easily.
Easily. It just went from, you know, not having seen any of his projects to being like, this guy's amazing. Love everything he does and love the way he goes about it in terms of commentary, visuals, storytelling, and whatnot. So anything that could kind of encompass from the outside, you know, looking in, that kind of vibe where we're like, oh, this looks enjoyable. It seems like it's, you know, maybe it might deal with themes that we would like to talk about. Those would go on the list. And then eventually it became, you know, basically a list of films where people just get to suggest. We put it on a genre tab and you know, slap it on there. And then whenever we feel like, okay, let's watch what horror films we haven't seen
Right.
that a lot of people have been suggesting. And then that becomes something that we want to do, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like I said, you know, it's like it continuously opens up. It's an exponential growth because you watch one Paul Verhoeven film, and then it's like, okay, now we can look into like all his other films that
Right.
he has, that we haven't seen, and so on, and just like it keeps growing, like like a tree branch every single time that you just open a door. And another dynamic that you have though with the channel is being able to show each other movies that one has seen that the other one has not, and it's a rewatch for one of you. You're revisiting it, and there's like different tiers of that. There's like you're rewatching it because you really love the film and like you want to really share that, but you might be rewatching it because you haven't seen it since you were a kid, so it's like you're watching it almost fresh for the first time. I guess, how does that dynamic sort of change and like feel for you guys when you're watching it with someone and seeing it through their eyes, because they're watching for the first time, but also now you're watching it on camera for the first time? There's like a lot of layers to it.
I personally love it. I love showing him movies, and I love when he shows me movies, because I feel like there's always a reason, and a very good reason, that we want to show each other something. And I still remember like one of the biggest shockers, aside from The Matrix, which turned me yet into another YouTube commenter, which was like, how did you never watch this movie? And that was actually The Sixth Sense. And for obvious reasons, I was very, very excited to show him that. And, we talked about that concept for a while, where it's like, I don't know, like, how are people going to take it, and in the end, like we finally got to that point where it's like, yeah, you know what, we're gonna try this out and just see how it goes. And like the fun part of it is, it's that even though like our subscribers, our viewers, they're not physically right across from me, in my head I can just imagine like what other people in my position would say or think or feel when he says something that is very close to home, or when he says something that's gonna be heartbreaking later on, right? And that, aside from the fact that I get to see how he takes something in, how he observes a movie, how he feels about the characters and whatnot, and what his theories are, to me, it's so much fun. It's like I get to react and watch a reaction all at the same time. So for me, it's like the best thing ever. Like, not complaining at all. But I remember that was a big one that I was just like waiting for. It was like, I have to show him this, because I know he's gonna love it and he's not gonna see it coming. And it was such a trip, man. And that movie is also something that's very dear to my heart. It's one of those movies that has stuck with me over the years. It was something that really changed the trajectory of my life. Like that movie, The Matrix, where I was just like, holy crap, like this is immersive. This is all encompassing. This is life, but exponential. The way they told these stories, the way they make you think, and the way they challenge you, and the way that they comfort you afterwards. Like it was such an amazing journey with both of those films. So like for me, it was just like a highlight, like one of the highlights easily on this channel. But yeah, like it's definitely like one of my favorite parts, showing him movies. And then I get to have a little inside joke with our viewers, which is always fun.
Hey guys, Eric from Passionfruit. Just wanted to thank you for tuning into this episode of Reactorverse. To everyone who's commented on our videos, shared our work, or otherwise supported the channel, we see you, we appreciate you, and we've got a lot of exciting things coming for the creator community at Passionfruit. If you haven't already, the usual stuff on YouTube always helps us. Hitting that like button and subscribing with the bell so you'll be notified when new videos come out. We also have a bi-weekly Passionfruit newsletter that focuses on the creator industry, which you can sign up for through the link in the video description and the pinned comment. Twice a week, you'll get our best stories, as well as exclusive interviews, expert reviews, and the latest resource guides to help you navigate every stage of the creator journey. We've even got a weekend newsletter on the way, with a curated creator spotlight that focuses on the best online content from the people who make it, you. Thanks again for supporting Passionfruit and Reactorverse and helping make your content your business, and giving love to the people who make the web.
Yeah, I just rewatched your Logan reaction, which was Ari, you were showing Denise that one for the time, and being able to like experience those things with each other for the first time on camera is like it's such a special experience, and it's a part of the personal development that you guys have with each other through the channel. I guess over the years, how have you sort of developed just like the on-screen relationship, and how does that bleed into just like your understanding of each other through the material itself?
That's a great question.
That is a great question. I say we're pretty, I mean, we get along extremely well. So the way that we show up here, it's not that different than the way that, as soon as we turn off the camera and we walk away, like we genuinely, like the other day, for example, right? We were watching, because now the funny part is we have to choose which movies we want to watch just for ourselves. Like we
Right.
just want to hang out, Saturday night, just let's pop on a movie and let's just chill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the movie ends and we find ourselves going back and forth and it feels like a discussion right after
really
our YouTube
does.
video. And it's like,
Right.
it's exactly the way we are. Like, I guess the thing that's been the best for ourselves, both in our personal life and also something that does come across in the channel, is our communication and how we are able to convey like why we think that something is whatever it might
Right.
be. So I think that's something that definitely the channel has helped develop that. I feel like perhaps before I had a harder time expressing myself, like the why of things or my opinion of them. And
Right.
through this, we've been able to kind of, I guess we have a really cool synergy where you actually finish my sentences.
Yeah.
Like I know it sounds cliche, but she actually does. Like she knows sometimes I get
Finish mine
stuck.
too.
Sometimes you might be stuck because you're overwhelmed or you don't really know how to phrase something, and she just knows what I'm gonna say or what I mean. So that's also been very helpful where I get stuck and I'm like, shit, like what's the word that I'm looking for? She's like, this word? I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to say. Thank you so much.
And same goes, back that way where I'm like, I'm really trying to express something here. And sometimes I'm just, in a desperate lack of vocabulary because my brain just decided to malfunction. So like, that's when he kind of steps in and actually like helps me out with that. And like, that's been such a great part of this as well, because like, it's really not like, we're portraying characters while we're doing this, right? This is very much us. And thankfully that's the case, because I feel like it would be exhausting leading like a double life like that. The way we talk to each other, the way we agree or even disagree about movies, I think that's because like that happens too. Like most, like
we
I feel
can
like
disagree, and it's like, okay, at least we've learned, because we get very passionate, right?
very passionate.
There's some endings where we've disagreed on an ending on a film, or I'm very particular in a weird way. I don't know what it is. It might be my ADHD or I don't know why. But if a film doesn't end strongly, I get angry, because let's say I've loved 90% of the film, like actually genuinely loved that movie up until that point, and then they do some BS to mess it up. I get pissed off. Even worse than when it's just a bad movie. When it's just a bad movie, I'm like, it's entertaining. I can enjoy it. I can appreciate you try to do something different.
Right.
But when it's a movie that's like good, that I genuinely was like, I felt impacted by, and then you mess up the ending, I get mad, because it's like you had the potential, and then all you had to do was park the vehicle, and you just couldn't do it, and I get mad. And for her, she's very forgiving in that sense. Like in this particular sense, when it comes to endings, she's a bit more forgiving, and she'd be like, maybe they wanted to do this, or maybe they found the ending that would have been the easiest a little bit too cliche, or maybe they wanted to do just something different, right? And she's a bit more understanding of the situation, whereas I'm not. And before we used to get like not heated, but definitely passionate, like, no, like, you know what you're talking about, like, this is not, how would they do this, like, this is so bad as a decision. And I guess through the channel now, we've been able to accept, we've always been able to accept each other's opinions, but having the channel now allows us to be like, okay, yeah, I have the mic, so you got to stay quiet. Let me talk about why I think this should have been this way. And then she gets to talk about why she thinks it could have been this way. And funny enough, we get to develop, again, opinions a little bit more. And that's happening on camera. That's happening on real time. There's no script for that. There's nothing set in stone. And we actually get to talk it out. And a lot of times I find myself, getting almost convinced by her as to, oh, yeah, you know what? That actually sounds enticing. That sounds like a genuine cool way of why they would do this. Maybe it wasn't conveyed in the right way.
Right.
Maybe they could have done something different, but at least the theme itself or the concept, I like it. So sometimes she can deconstruct something for me to to make it a little bit more palatable. And I think that's something that's been allowing us to grow more as this dynamic that we have as a duo has very much been able to be give and take in that sense.
Yeah. I was going to say like that's one of the great parts of this, where you also convince me sometimes where I'm like, wait a minute, he just Jedi mind tricked me. Like, that's not what I thought initially. That was not what I was saying. But it's such a wonderful thing, because this is, at the end of the day, we're not seated here at a debate table. We're not trying to like one up each other, or like, oh yeah, that destroyed your argument. It's more like, I wonder what you think about this and why you think that. And having that approach really for me personally, it really expanded upon how I view movies, because there are certain choices or certain character tropes or story tropes that I just have that knee-jerk reaction where I'm like, why would you do this? God, it's like, it's the nagging wife, or like, the husband or, boyfriend that never believes the wife/girlfriend that the house is haunted. Like those things that we've talked about that before. There's certain tropes that I'm just so sick and tired of. But because of the discussions that we get to have, it has made me a lot more mindful when I'm watching something. So I don't follow that knee-jerk reaction, which is my own biases. I kind of give it its time, be like, wait, let's see it play out, right? Like, let them cook. Let them cook.
Yeah.
Let's see what they have to offer in the end. And sometimes I get pleasantly surprised, and sometimes not so much. But yeah, like, we're very different when it comes to the ending thing. I'm a lot more forgiving when it comes to the ending. I feel like if the movie 95% of it was good, I don't give a shit about the ending. I'll just write something in my own head, like it's fine.
Yeah, no.
But like, I love that. I love that, like, there's certain differences that are like quite clearly defined, and I think that just makes a much more interesting dynamic especially when we're faced with a situation like that where I do like the ending and he doesn't.
Yeah.
That's where the fun begins, right? That's where we get to share with each other. It's like, okay, why do you like this? Why don't you like this? And then we get to learn more from that. And also like from the comment section as well, where they're like, oh, actually I like it because of this, or I don't like it because of that. And that it's like the cyclical thing that you mentioned again. It's like, that's how the growth happens, that how the synergy keeps going and the momentum keeps moving forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's kind of like what I said earlier. It's just like over what you said earlier, Ari, which is just the idea of not having, preconceptions about the material. You go in with an open mind and you want to really learn about, what it's trying to say, and then giving it its space to sort of, try, to explain itself with you, and trying to engage with it on a fair level. So that way, when you get to it and you can have those disagreements, you can at least, like you said, ask why. Why do I feel this way? Why did it not work for me? Instead of just like, shoving it off because you're like, it just didn't do it.
Right.
So you're able to sort of, develop that sense a little bit. And I guess over the years, like you said, we've, going from servers now to doing this, as like your main job. You mentioned up top, some days are hard. Some days, you maybe had like a hard day, like some tough news or whatever. But you still got to get on camera, to like, present yourself and be engaged and on, so to speak, with the material. I guess, how do you, sort of make that shift, when you have, like a day that was like particularly tough to get through, but you got to get on camera and you just got to get in the zone, so to speak. Do you have any sort of practices or techniques to just sort of like, get focused on this and shut out everything else?
Yes, actually, I would say, I feel like, first of all, I'm terrible with like sleeping schedules. I suck. I do not sleep most nights, so I'm trying to fix that. But before I need to show up, and I know that I'm gonna need that that bit of that energy, that burst of energy, right? Kind of take a nice shower to clear my mind, before anything. Have a little bit of caffeine to help, and then music tends to be a great way to get me there. I mentioned, we love music, so just putting something on that gets me in the mood. And then I, in a more psychological, and in the psychological aspect, I guess, music does help. And then I also think, hey, like you're gonna watch a cool movie. Like that's something that you love, and it's gonna be a way for you to kind of escape whatever's troubling you. Because there's also stress, with this platform. It's not all amazing. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I love it, but it comes with its challenges, And I feel like getting to accept it in its entirety is not always easy. Getting to be like, yeah, this is the like the cool part of the job. Everybody loves that, right? Like that's amazing. But sometimes the hard part can drag a little bit. But I feel like the thing that always pulls me back into a mood where I'm like, this is going to be a cool day, regardless of what's going on, is that I remember having way worse days when YouTube was the thing that pulled me out of it. Watching some other creator be in a great mood, watching something cool that I enjoyed, that was the thing that pulled me out of that shitty day. So it kind of feels like the passing of a torch in a way, where
Mhm.
I feel responsible in a way. And it's like, you know what? I might be feeling a little bit more irritable today. I
Yeah.
might have not slept much. I maybe got some bad news, but people have it rough out there, way
Yeah.
worse than me, and at the end of the day, I'm doing something I love. Let me put all of that aside for 1 second. And let's all just put everything aside for 1 second and just have
Mhm.
this 1 hour of enjoying something we all love. And that mentality really, really helps to bring in a positive energy, bring in that sense that, at least I feel like we're giving back in a way,
Yeah.
to all those people that got to pull us out of those difficult times. At least now we get to do the same for others people, hopefully that's the goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's it, it's like you said, it's some of the basic things like listening to, music that's gonna make you feel a bit more upbeat, make you feel in a better mood, make you feel more confident. And sometimes, I'll just be like, hey, like can you give me a bit of a pep talk like before we get to do this, or like just having a conversation about something like a video that we happen to watch or like the one that we wanted to show each other or something where we get to just have a conversation about something that's not necessarily relevant to the reaction that we're about to record. That helps a lot. And like you said, it's this is might sound really cheesy, but it's really just being grateful that this is that these are the difficulties that we're dealing with. Because like you said, like, we've had rougher days, we've had tougher times. And it's like, what would my past self say to me if she saw me whining right now? Because that would not be cool. So it's like, it's not necessarily like tough love. Like you still have to acknowledge that sometimes you're just not feeling it, right? Sometimes
Right.
it's just not the vibe. Sometimes it's just you're just not quite in the mood, or something happened that's kind of slowing you down, like when it comes to your mood. But eventually, like there is that compartmentalization where it's like work. It's still work. Like you have to leave your bullshit outside of the door, and you have to, that's where the discipline has to come in, where you have to get serious and be like, listen, this is still something that, people are watching. People are giving you one of the most valuable things that they have, which is time. So make it worth it, don't waste their time. And I think that's like one of those motivators that does kind of get me out of my funk when I need it to.
No, you're totally right. Yeah, like all that entirely. Yeah, it's like coming full circle, being fans of the space, of just YouTube in general, and then like being able to sort of give back to an audience that is there, and you can like know that you're speaking to someone at least, and like it's something that can definitely motivate you to get through it. And I think that sort of ties into some of our round out questions here, which is over the years with the channel, what has been the most consistent obstacle that you've faced with it?
Consistent obstacle.
Paramount.
Don't say their name. They will show up. They will take this video down, even though it has nothing to do with them.
Copyright
Don't
claim.
say it. Don't invoke them, please. I've been having nightmares.
Dude, facts.
Yes, I think dealing with certain studios, allegedly,
Allegedly.
that's been quite rough. But I think plenty of people in the space would feel the same way. I've seen many people talk about it. Copyright is definitely something that needs to be, I think, better defined. I feel like it's too much of a gray area, so we don't really know what parameters work. I mean, we kind of know, but we don't, depending on the studio, right? Like some people are more rougher, I guess I would say. They're a bit more strict than others. Yeah. So even though you're doing it within the parameters that you can operate, something might still get slapped with a claim, and that that sucks. But you get used to that. But I wish that it wasn't such a everyday thing. But that's kind of like it's part of the gig, I guess.
Yeah.
And then it changes every year or so, like their standards, like it's stricter or whatever.
Yeah,
right.
That's been an issue. But what's been more irritating than that, and that's this is directly to do with this platform, and I think it's a phenomenal platform. But again, it has certain restrictions that I feel like they're tightening more and more every year, and it's just getting to a point where it just is not quite fair. And I've spoken to YouTube about this, but essentially the whole censorship situation and how bad it's gotten throughout the years. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, because I was always on YouTube. So I've seen my creators that I love grow and whatnot. And I've seen how they've had to modify their content where they are so far away from what they were doing 10 years ago in terms of what they were allowed to do. And we've seen that within the short time that we've been on the platform, we've already seen a huge difference. So for example, our Deadpool video has been up for a year, and exactly on its year anniversary, it got age restricted and hit with a yellow monetization. And I was like, what the, this has been out for a year.
Yeah.
And somebody decided to, take another look at it, and certain things that were just not part of censor are now becoming, censored. And I don't mind adjusting to the times, right? Even though it sucks, I can still prepare and we can edit things out and kind of make it palatable for YouTube. It's when it's like retroactively applied that I have a problem with. Like, what the hell is that about? You can't just do it and not tell your creators, because I have not heard an update about it. Like I keep an eye open. That's kind of part of my job, to be up to date on any updates from YouTube and whatnot. And censorship has just gotten to a ridiculous point where if you get a blood, like a drop of blood on the face, they will say that's moderately graphic, whatever that means. And they keep it abstract enough for you to not really learn from your mistakes, even though you have the best of your intentions and the will to really learn, because obviously this is, part of your livelihood. You do not want these problems. And even with, demonetized content is not really that much of an issue, because we produce enough content that we don't mind if a video goes down or not. But the fact that video is now age restricted, it gets chopped completely from the shelf, basically. It doesn't get really pushed out to people to see, and it sucks. It really does. And I think that's something that needs to be addressed. They keep passing this invisible ball. YouTube says it's the advertisers that are making them do it, and then the advertiser says, well, yeah, YouTube controls their own platform, so there's nobody to blame, really. And I would just like a little bit more transparency with the creators, since if we're all in this together, YouTube gets a piece of the pie, we get a piece of the pie. So let's have a collaboration that's a bit more transparent. And I feel like that's gotten extremely difficult throughout the very short period of time that we've been on here. The first year was kind of figuring out the ropes, and then the second year, everything changed. And now starting 2025, we feel like everything is changing all once again, and it's getting more and more ridiculous, to the point we got a video demonetized because there was 3 seconds of moaning, but you couldn't see anything. It was just moaning, just audio. And they were like, oh, it's demonetized because of adult content. And it's getting to a point where what do we do? Can we not show anything themed? And it feels like we are becoming babysitters little by little. Whereas I was like, dude, you guys have YouTube Kids. Shouldn't that be the platform that you put your, if you're really worried about children being exposed to content that might not be appropriate, I'm totally for that. But at the same time, you can't enforce creators to babysit your kid if they're watching stuff they're not supposed to. That's your job as a parent, right? So, and it's a whole, when it comes to YouTube as a whole, they are making us do this and whatnot. When it comes to, the whole point is that the advertisers can't really be seen being, advertising content that they might not be happy with. So now they're just striking the hammer on everything. And it's just really difficult.
Yeah, it's actually mind-blowing how much it's changed in a year, and
context matters. It's Deadpool.
It really
it's
does.
a movie, dude. Come on. If it's an actual video of someone getting murdered, I would totally understand. It's graphic. It's obviously, but it's a comic book film.
This is a movie.
Relax.
You know what I mean? This is fictional work. This is not real. This is not happening to an actual person.
It's not like it's gore that's uncensored. We censored that video. The gore, that's obvious. And it still got hit because of moaning. I was like, come on, man.
And there's certain things where it's it's like having to blur a lady who's wearing regular underwear, mind you, it's not even a thong, and we have to blur the butt cheeks because, oh my God, the horror of the butt cheeks, I understand certain things, if it's full-on nudity with something like The Boys, or there's certain things out there where you really do get the full Monty, and I'm like, yes, I understand, not everybody signed up to see that, you know what I mean? That's totally fair. Or having a certain amount of curse words, or eliminating certain curse words or slurs, that's totally fine. Again, like he said, I will happily abide by it, But, there have been times where something gets slapped with ad suitability and we're like, okay, what exactly is the problem? They're like, oh, it could be this part.
Figure it out. It's an hour video.
And I'm like,
you might have done this.
Yeah.
Great.
It's just one of those things where I'm like, well, it wasn't an issue with this video, and like that has the exact same thing. So what gives here? I feel like some more open communication, like, because it's the thing when you upload something, the entire video gets scanned for copyright, correct? So if the clip is too long or something happens, like they give you an exact minute mark,
right?
The second mark, they tell you this part to this part is what's getting claimed. And it's like, great, so I can adjust that. I can make changes to that. So I don't understand why, the video goes through that whole process while you're uploading it and it's sitting there for however much time. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, no, this is actually not suitable. It would be great to have a system for that. Like we will happily, cooperate with you. We want to stay on this platform. We like being on this platform and everyone else to also be safe here. So yeah, those are like the main things that every once in a while, it rears its head again and it's like, okay, here we go again. And then we get some time of peace and then it comes back.
Yeah, it's tough. And like you said, like the retroactive, actions are the hardest part because it's like I didn't know that a year ago when that didn't exist. How am I supposed to pay your changes, in standards? And yeah, it's I've definitely heard it from other creators as well, just like how, insanely difficult it's been to just navigate that stuff. Especially it's not the same for every channel, it's like arbitrary. Our channels get hit with different things they can upload like a very similar cut. One gets demonetized, one doesn't, and yeah, it's very tough to sort of navigate without any sort of transparency from the platform itself.
Yeah.
But additional to that, I guess, how have you personally grown in your time with the channel?
Well, for me, it's a bit of an easier response because when I first started this journey, it was very much like I mentioned, I was very much stuck in my niche of movies I knew I would enjoy, and I would not really expand from that. And doing this has allowed me to watch a bunch of movies I would have not had the opportunity. I would have not given myself the opportunity to watch them if I was by myself and just watching them on my own. I think eventually I would have, come around maybe and watched some of them, but I've been able to watch movies that I never thought I would enjoy as much as I did, and really grow as a person from learning to consume things that are different. And that's allowed me to learn as well that by doing so, you start to have tools to better, whether it's in your own creative endeavors and whatnot, you have a broader picture per se. You're not seeing it through just one perspective. You're able to kind of understand what tools you got to use and when, especially when it comes to writing and whatnot. So I think being exposed to movies that are from other decades, 70s, 80s, 90s, and understanding why they were the way they were has been a wonderful growing opportunity. I never thought I would watch as many movies from that period in time ever. And it's actually become one of my favorite things to do now. So it's a complete 180. That mentality I had of, if it doesn't have special effects or top of the line, tech, I'm probably not going to enjoy it. That couldn't be further from the truth now. Now I'm like very much narrative based, and what's the story, what's the character arc, and then how did they convey that visually with the tools they had. Now I find myself appreciating films like The Thing or Alien, right, the original, where they didn't necessarily have top of the line tech. They couldn't do the things they really wanted to do, but they were like, you know what, screw it, we're gonna give it a shot anyway and see what we can make out of it. And it looks pretty darn good. Like it still looks great, and that's kind of been very much like it's been a way for me to have more of an optimistic point of view. Like I said, like you don't always need the top of the line anything to make it look good. What you need is passion and discipline and coming in and trying new things. So watching these new movies has been a great way to, put myself up in that seat and be like, oh, you got to have the discipline to watch something you think you might not be able to enjoy, and then you're going to end up liking it because that's the way it always goes. But also, putting extra effort elsewhere where normally I would have been normally maybe I wasn't like feeling doing it because I thought I didn't have the necessary tools. And I feel like YouTube definitely was the first time where it was like, it doesn't matter. Just do it. Do it at the best of your ability.
Yeah.
Put it out there and then get the things that you think you might need to make the content better. But at the end of the day, you realize that all you needed really is you and a camera. That's really it. It's that basic. And then you start growing from there. And that's kind of been such a big learning lesson for me that's allowed me to grow so much as a person, where I give things a chance now. I come in open. I'm ready to absorb as much information from the artist. Like, what are they trying to convey? Were they good at it? Right. Sometimes they're trying to convey something. It doesn't work out, but why didn't it work out? And it's allowed me to see movies in a much neutral way, non-judgmental way, and then let it wow me, let it move me, let it do what it wants with my mind for those, hour and a half to 2 hours. And then I'll decide for myself whether or not it was, it hit me personally and if it moved me. And, being able to be that open to another artist has really showed me just how beautiful the art style is, the art form. I know it sounds, again, anybody that falls in love with movies will say this, but there's a certain level of vulnerability too, allowing yourself to be open enough to be manipulated by somebody else's ideas and being just thrown into that world. And I feel like allowing myself to do that more and more without any preconceived notions or judgment before I even watch the film has been very freeing and liberating. And it's allowed me to make better assessments as well. When I'm talking about why I like a movie, I'm able to write that down or see the discussions of our own videos and be like, because I'm brutally honest about why I like it, I have a very clear idea of how I would want to do this. Right. So it's been an amazing journey in that sense.
Yeah. I think it's been a very similar experience for me as well, in the sense of keeping an open mind. I was much more locked in certain genres that I really loved, like horror being one of them, right? And it's been such a great tool to really not only train your concentration to pay attention to every single thing and look at it analytically, but also to feel what you're supposed to feel at the same time. It's like you're, multitasking sometimes, where, you're watching something and you understand that the movie's trying to make you feel a certain emotion. And so you just have to let yourself get swept away by it. And that was something that I did have trouble with for a long time, and this is it again, practice makes perfect. Like with anything else, it's been great to, like you said, open yourself up to it. But for me in particular, it's also being mindful about how I convey my thoughts, right? Because like I can have a knee-jerk reaction for a certain choice or whatever. And it's really about patience. It's about letting the movie do the talking and not immediately jump to being like, why would you do that? Oh my God, that's so stupid. Instead of going straight into judgment mode, to kind of get your foot off the gas pedal a little bit and just kind of let it ride for a little bit. Yeah. It's the patience that has come with it, but also, getting to appreciate a genre that I'd never thought I would, which is comedy, because I've never really watched a whole lot of comedy. And through this channel, we got to watch some very, very brutally funny movies. And it's been great. It's been great that I get to discover, it's like I get to discover something new about myself, right? Like I never thought that I would actually enjoy certain genres or certain movies. And it's the letting yourself be open to be pleasantly surprised, right? Because like we kind of live in a time where it's so normalized to be very judgmental and very close-minded, right? It's like, oh no, it's gonna suck. I already know. Like, oh my God, look at this trailer. It's trash. And it's like, you haven't seen it yet. Give it a chance. Once you give it a chance and you still don't like it, then okay, but at least be fair, and it really is that fairness. And, we try to convey that as much as we can, when we watch movies, even if it's a movie that we don't necessarily love, or if there's a choice that we didn't love a whole lot, there's still a way to communicate that in a respectful way. Because the way that I see it is, if the director or the actor or whoever you're complaining about sat across from you right now, would you say it in the exact same tone? If you wouldn't, then you should probably change how you say it, because these are real people. These are real people that also exist in this space. You never know what. If you're saying, "Oh my God, this actor, oh my God, was so trash. How did you even get this far?" or whatever, going so aggressively ham on criticizing something, there's a way to criticize something but still be productive about it. And that's been a skill that I got to cultivate a little more, over time. And I'm very glad that that's happened, because we are artists here. Like there's going to be critique no matter what, and take some of the feedback that applies, and if it doesn't apply, just let it fly. Right? You can't let all the haters like get to you. You can't listen to the silly shit. Listen to the things that will actually make your product better. But yeah, like it's been fantastic, man. Like honestly, just working, and it's he plays a huge part in that. He's very much, listen to both sides of the story type of person. He really has also taught me to like take a breath before you make your judgments. Just patience. So it's been like him and the channel all at the same time. So yeah, I'm really grateful that this is where we get to be at the moment.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it's beautifully said, definitely, from both of you.
Thank you.
That's
Thank
how
you so
that
much.
impacts
Thank
you.
you.
Like, that's a really well, I think, distilled articulation about like the reaction space in general, and how it, why I really love it. Why I love like seeing people and like their interactions with the material, because of that open-mindedness. And open-mindedness is a luxury that we take for granted very much these days.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to see that happen through the space. We do have our final questionnaire, which is just 10 questions down the line for you guys.
Okay.
First question being, what is your favorite TV show of all time?
Mm.
Oh no.
Ah,
Haunting of Hill House.
I will.
That's a good one.
Sons of Anarchy. I think it'll go there. Yeah.
Both great. Both great answers. What was your favorite film of all time?
Gosh, that's like asking for a favorite song.
You can't do this to me.
Okay, I think I have one. I think it's been one that I've been thinking about ever since I watched it. We watched it for the channel, actually. We watched it here. And ever since I watched it, I have not been able to stop thinking about it. So it's very close to these two, but I'm going to choose one. I think it will have to go to Alien, the original Alien.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say The Thing is very close as well. It's similar, but I feel like the Alien is just a little bit ahead.
Yeah, that's a great pick.
Yeah, Alien definitely made my final cut. There are just a few movies that I just can't ignore, the ones that just impacted me so much. Like The Sixth Sense or Signs.
Mm-hmm. Right. I love Signs so much.
Yeah.
I love Signs.
It's a great film.
I'm just unabashedly in love with it. And shit. This is really hard. Okay, because for me, I think it changes every day based on the mood. But for today, I would say like it's one of those, either like Sixth Sense, Signs, or Alien.
Oh, wow.
All great picks. Yeah, all fantastic picks. What stresses you out?
Being late to our own self-imposed schedule. That stresses me out.
Facts.
That,
Fair.
I am the worst boss I've ever had and the best one at the same time. So being late for work when I don't really have a schedule is it's ironic.
Yeah.
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 That's very fair.
Definitely that.
Yeah.
Yeah, being late in general is awful, but being late to your own self-imposed schedule, it's like you feel like you're letting yourself down. You're like, damn it, like get yourself together.
Yeah. What helps you relax?
Watching movies, for me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
For me, it's different. It's gaming. I like to
Oh.
move away from the medium a little bit from
Mhm.
films because we're in it for such a long time, and gaming definitely becomes like that other outlet where I still get to absorb some storytelling, but it's in a different medium. I get to actually play and do the actions, and it's a great way to kind of escape for a bit.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that ties into our next question, which is what is a hobby or passion you have outside of TV and film?
Gosh, a lot of it is tied to TV and film.
Gaming works though. Gaming works as well.
Wait, I want to say writing.
But it's tied to TV and film.
It's kind of tied. I guess, music.
I would take writing. Though. Writing is like a different
Okay.
sort of practice. At
There you
least,
go.
yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I would say like listening to music
Yeah.
too.
Mhm. Oh,
Like
yeah.
I very much dig that. Like the way it can change your mood. Like I mentioned, I do use that for that as well, and just be able to clear your mind for a little bit. So yeah, listening to music is definitely up there.
Yeah.
Great. What fictional character do you relate to or just care deeply about?
So I've got two. Is that fair? Can I?
Sure. Yeah.
Awesome. So the first one I would say is like the would be Peter Parker, Spider-Man.
Yeah.
That was like the first, one of the first comic books I ever read. Those stories, I couldn't even quantify how much they probably had an impact on my day to day growing up as a kid, and how much it probably has an impact on today. It was like I read those throughout my formative years, so I can only imagine just how much those stories potentially impacted who I am. So I would say definitely Peter Parker, Spider-Man for a plethora of reasons, and then more recently, you're going to be happy about this response, but I think I would put Frodo up there, and that's just after watching. She's the one who showed me the Lord of the Rings films, and the second film in particular, the Two Towers. I loved how they delved into the whole character aspect of it, and I loved that we got to see the struggle. I like to see that being a hero is not always easy, and doing the right thing is not always easy. And having him as a character, I deeply cared for him. By obviously by the second film, you do you care for all of them, but you also feel that sense of sadness of you obviously can't do anything to help him out, but you would if you could. So I would say he's definitely one of those characters where the more the story progresses, the more you care, but also the more you realize that you might. Anyway, I don't want to spoil it for anybody that hasn't watched it, but you care deeply for him, and the more you watch the film, the more you care, and it definitely impacted me in a great way. Those movies,
absolutely, yeah,
yeah. For me, one of the characters that I care about so deeply and have just loved for many years, ever since I read the books, is actually Katniss Everdeen from the Hunger Games. If I don't know if you've read the books or if you've watched the movies, like this is a character that's gone through just a little bit, some traumatic things in her life, and just the sheer strength and tenacity that she has. And it's like she's like that character where I'm like, I really wish you all of the best, man. Like you've gone through a lot. I hope everything is just sunshine and rainbows after this.
Yeah. Yeah, both characters that really overcame a lot, and so great picks. What is your guilty pleasure show or film?
Guilty pleasure show, I would say probably like Jackass. Like just it's like just a bunch of dudes doing dumb shit, it's just you can turn off your brain and just have fun, just have a laugh.
It's a great one.
I love that one. The Vampire Diaries.
Vampire Diaries,
It's just, man, I have to say, like the first 3 or 4 seasons, like they were so juicy, man. Like I was just there for the drama. Like I'm just like, take me away. Because I wasn't involved in any drama whatsoever at the time. Like when that was going on, and like with their boyfriends and their friends and this and that and vampires and whatever, I was just eating it up. I was loving it. And like, I was just having such a blast with it. So like, guilty in a way, yes, because it can be very cheesy at times, but like, I'll still wear that badge very proudly.
All right.
Yeah, of course, yeah. We can be proud of our guilts. Yeah.
Yeah.
What show or film gave you your favorite reaction experience with the channel?
Ooh, there's a bunch.
That's a great question. I'm like going through my mind right now through the 50 or 100 of my top experiences that I know I've had.
Yeah,
I got to say that the Sixth Sense was definitely one of those. For obvious reasons. I would say in my heart, I feel like it's the Lord of the Rings. We watched, we watched the extended edition. It was a commitment. It was 12 hours of a journey. And by the time that movie ended, I felt so damn empty. I was like, gosh, I can't believe it's gone. Yeah. And I was going through withdrawals, and I was like emotional. Just talking about it gets me emotional. I was like, gosh, like it's amazing how these stories can impact people. Like I fell in love with that, right? And these movies did that a lot. I was able to laugh. I was able to cry. I sobbed like a baby watching those movies, and I was able to cheer and to feel fear and to feel despair and all of the emotions, all of the range I could have possibly felt watching any other movie, you know, with this entire journey, I was able to feel all of it, and it's there. I get to rewatch that first time, you know,
Yeah.
and how I reacted to it the very first time. That's going to be there, immortalized forever, and that's such a
Yeah.
special thing, and it meant a lot, and it still does every day. I think about those movies, and I'm like, yeah, it's pretty darn good
Yeah, it's pretty
story.
good.
It's really good.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's that, and just because of the pure anticipation of it, I remember like Deadpool and Wolverine was
Oh,
absolutely nuts.
that was fun.
That was nuts.
My face
like
hurt so much
Dude.
after. As soon as the film stopped and we had to go into discussion, I could remember
Yeah.
like my
Dude,
muscles
it was
were
cramping. Like,
yeah, they were cramping from all the laughter and smiling throughout 2 hours.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they started off the movie with NSYNC's "Bye Bye Bye," so
Yeah, exactly.
no complaints from me at all. You know,
Right. Yeah. I definitely both super fun experiences. Deadpool, Wolverine just being like such a huge blast, and then Lord of the Rings, like I said, like you said, like it's a complete experience. It just
Yeah.
takes you through everything
Yeah.
by the end of it. And what show or film do you wish you could erase from your memory and react to again for the first time on camera?
Man, that is fantastic. We've had this conversation. That's the funny part. We've had this. I wish that was a superpower. Like, hey, please erase it. I wanna re-experience it. But to choose the one film,
it's hard. It's really difficult to nail it down to just the one.
I have okay. I gotta choose. I have too many options, but I will say probably Endgame, man. Honestly,
Yeah,
you know, I know it's probably like I'm sure other people feel the same way, but like honestly, damn, like that was a long time coming. You know, people that were following up on the characters and people that just loved the comics growing up, like that was an event.
Yeah.
And it almost feels like it happened in a different lifetime, doesn't it? Like it was
Yeah.
pre-pandemic, like we did not know what was coming, and everything was so different back then. And it feels like one of the last times that we all really got to get together and just have fun and not really criticize and just have a good time. And we all waited
Yeah.
for a year, sitting at the edge of our seats, not knowing what the hell was going on, what was going to happen to these
Yeah.
characters. And I
agree.
wish, man, you know, one of the most precious memories I have is being able to be in the cinema when that dropped and being able to experience that with the crowd. It felt like the Super Bowl, man. It felt like being in a stadium full of people. People were jumping up and down,
Yeah.
cheering, freaking crying. It was a phenomenal experience. I wish I could erase it from my memory and do it all over again, but I wish I could watch it in a packed theater on day one all over again.
yeah,
Yeah.
same. Honestly, that's a great answer. Same.
Now,
Yeah.
you don't get to.
No, I do. You stole the best answer. I don't think we've covered it on the channel necessarily, but one movie I would love to forget and experience for the first time again is Interstellar.
That's a great one as well. Both
Because-
great
Yeah,
theater
like,
experiences. Yeah, the scope of it.
It's been a while since I've watched it, but I just remember being emotionally floored by that movie, just completely taken by it and swept away. It was one of the greatest experiences that I've ever had watching a movie. I think that would be my top pick, where I was like, I wish I could just completely erase that from my brain so I could experience it all over again.
Yeah. I watched both of those here in LA at the TCL Chinese Theater.
Oh,
It's like their
nice.
main stadium theater that they have, and yeah, like just like the experience of being there in the theater for those things is just like unforgettable. Especially for Endgame and stuff. Like you said, like it feels like a lifetime ago. I think because it ended and then the pandemic happened, and it almost felt like
Yeah.
that's like a cap. That's like a good cap on, like, I don't know, movies and life and everything. You know, just like it all culminates into one big thing. So yeah, both of those are great experiences to have. And the final question here is: what advice would you give to your past self if you can go back in time when you first started the channel?
Don't be scared to just do it.
Yeah.
I think that applies for everything. I know that if I just told myself that, I would understand exactly what that means. And just jump at every opportunity, man. You know, fail or succeed, just try. You know, just go ahead and do it at the best of your ability and grow from the experience. Grow, learn, ask questions. Don't be scared to talk to people who are more experienced than you and ask them to help. Ask them for advice, listen. I think that would be the main thing, but definitely try new things, try the things that you want to do, the things that you feel passion for, and do it even if it's not perfect. So I used to be the type of person who would just wait until I felt like it was perfect, and it's never the right way to go about it. Just do it. Just do it at the best of your ability and learn from the experience, and you will have a much better time and continue to develop. So I would say just do it. Just go ahead.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah, mine is in a very similar vein, which is, don't be scared to, just be you, authentically you. Like, you don't have to, modulate anything about yourself or anything. Like, just being authentically yourself, being honest, being like dorky when you're feeling it, being sad when you're feeling it, really just staying true to the emotions that are happening internally and just kind of letting them flow and not feeling shy about it. It's okay. Like, it's okay. Like, if this particular moment hits you particularly hard, or if this moment, you thought it was particularly funny, like, it's okay to have a reaction. Like, it's okay to let it out. I think that would be one of the advice I would give myself, for sure.
Yeah, just free yourself to it.
Yeah.
And just experience it. Both solid pieces of advice, I think, for most creative endeavors.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Ari, Denise, thank you so much for being here today. It was a blast getting to talk to you and learn more about your life and your processes. Like, it's you had some real gems in there, I think.
Oh, thank you so much. That's so kind of you.
Thank you so much for having us. It meant a lot.
Yeah. And for the wonderful questions. You made us ponder quite a bit there.
Yeah.
That's what we aim for.
Yes.
Where can we find you on YouTube, social media, otherwise?
Well, on YouTube, it's going to be the Media Nights. You guys have us there if you want to see something a little bit different and just kind of kick back. We also have another secondary channel where we kind of just do whatever. Mostly, we've been into horror games and making ourselves scream and shout and jump out of our seats, which is a lot of fun for our viewers who jump on there. So you can see that on the Media Nights 2.0. And on social media, currently, we do have an Instagram with the Media Nights. We should be more active on it. We don't post that often, but if you follow us, that would be appreciated. We will promise to be more active there. And we do have an X account. So you can follow us there, tag us if you need to, suggest a film or let us know that something has dropped that you want us to react to. It's a great way to kind of like quickly see what people are asking for, or see if anything new that we might have missed has happened, like it's been the case with these trailers. People definitely did not waste any time in letting us know that the new Jurassic World trailer had dropped. So, you can find us on X at the Media Nights as well.
Yeah, I appreciate you spending your time here from the Jurassic World trailer.
It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. You can find me at Necrotic across social media. You can find us at Passionfruit for us across social media as well. You'll find links to our Discord and Patreon down below, and we'll catch everyone on the next episode.